You fidgeted uncomfortably, your skin raw from the amount of scrubbing, plucking, and tugging it had endured. As Edra was being dragged away, you were ushered by handmaidens through the carpeted hallways of the mansion. They brought you to a room with a joint bath chamber, where you were thoroughly cleansed in a wide porcelain tub. You'd be thankful for the comfort of warm water, if not for your anxiety spiking in this horrible situation, and the fact that there were 5 different pairs of hands on you at once. You resisted, but your protests fell on deaf ears. They moved like ghosts, solemn and quiet, and yet your voice was the phantom among them. When it became clear you could not avoid this, and that their actions seemed purely clinical, you tried to relax in their robotic care. After all, you hadn't had a proper bath in a while, only the freezing lakes and rivers Katsuki deemed clean enough to soak in. However, the soapy water could not quail the plaguing chill of the mansion, or the shivers of your own nerves. Little by little, an idea of what a concubine may be formed in your mind, and you shuddered at the thought. The handmaids led you back to the room once they were satisfied, and you stood in a silken gown facing a middle-aged woman. Her dark hair was streaked with grey, and her face lined with years of strife. Her tired silvery eyes skimmed your form impassively. "I told you to be gentle with them," the woman said, tiredly and with ire. "Will you be as forceful to the young lord's next concubine? Will you scrub until their skin begins to peel, and Lord Geten beheads you for damaging his prizes? Leave me with them." The handmaids bowed their heads, the one at the forefront apologizing, though she did not seem contrite. "We apologize, Akina-sama. We will act with more care on the next." She gestured for the handmaidens to exit the room before leaving herself and shutting the door. You turned to the new face, studying the person who seemed to hold some power in this frosted palace. Akina stared back and nodded for you to approach. "Come, little dove. Sit here." She stood next to a wide vanity table, deep in coloring like rosewood. An oval mirror with a golden frame of interlocking branches framing it adorned the table. You hesitated against the extravagance of everything here. It would seem when the Lord had initially offered you a life where you would never want for anything in this world, he had meant it, but what you missed and longed for was not of this world. Akina still waited patiently, and you swallow before taking a seat on the plush stool before the vanity. You look at your face in the mirror, realizing you hadn't really seen it in the past few months. There weren't many opportunities to view your face while traveling. It remained your face, and yet possessed subtle differences brought on by the challenges you had endured. So this is the beauty that hastened my lord to extend the magic dampness far into the forest. I will admit, you are unique. While you observed yourself, Akina had been observing you as well. Magic dampness? The thing that had affected Edra and Katsuki's power? The Lord had extended it? You mean, where we were traveling is not the Lord's territory? You question? Akina picked up a comb from the table and began working it through your hair. In a manner of speaking, everything in Kiramaku is Lord Himura's, and by extension, young Lord Geten's. But usually, the dampeners protect the mansion and not the forest. As soon as he came back from the market, he ordered the dampness to extend and alert of any travelers passing. He gave the guards your description and told them to inspect anyone who triggered the barrier. Akina explained calmly while she detangled. So it was true. Geten had targeted you. Katsuki and Edro were trapped here because of you. You eyed Akina through the mirror, her attention on styling your hair. She was being awfully forthcoming, so with misled confidence, he blurted, "Is there a way my friends and I can escape from Geten?" Akina's eyes flicked to yours in the mirror. "You will do well to remember him as Lord Geten," she said, before exhaling. "I don't think I've introduced myself properly. I am Akina. I tend to the house's concubines. The master of the home is out traveling and prefers to take his concubines with him. As you are the young lord's new concubine, it is my duty to tend to you and clear up any misunderstandings you may have." Akina pressed your elbow up, guiding you to stand. She reached to untie your robe, and you jerked away. Despite being naked in front of strangers minutes ago, you weren't keen on adding to that list. Akina straightened, and her hollow stare bored into you. "Let me be very clear, young dove. You made this decision to become his concubine of sound mind, and by our laws, that is concrete. You will be his concubine for life. This will be your home and your prison until you decay." "I was threatened into making this decision," you defend in disbelief, distressed by her words and how trapped they made you feel. "He threatened my friends." "But you agreed," Akina urged, reaching for your robe again, this time holding firm as you attempted to move away. "There is no point, young dove," she says, as she turned to the bed and carefully brings the clothing upon it to you. "However, there are worse fates. You will be second only to the young lord's official consort, and even then, he might choose you." You shake your head, the walls suddenly feeling airtight. The oxygen in the room appeared sparse. "I can't stay here. I have somewhere to be." Akina exhaled lightly. "Then you should have let the dragon's blood be spilled, because now your fate is sealed." Your trembles did not stop, even as Akina tended to you with care. Though she wasn't willing to help, she handled you with tenderness and patience, like someone who had been in this position. She dabbled with the strands of your hair and dusted a powder onto your cheeks, all while panic thoughts invaded your mind. What if Akina was right and you could not escape? You were trapped here, alone, without so much as a clue as to where Katsuki and Edro were, or if they were even still alive. Akina paid no heed to your growing anxiety, only pulled you to stand as she examined you a last time. Her eyes traveled from your styled hair to your bare feet. She seemed satisfied with her work and said, "Come, Lord Geten is expecting you." She walked ahead, opening the door, and waited. You hesitated, casting your gaze to the mirror. Horrid ideas flooded your mind at the sight of your image. Akina had skillfully styled your hair and tampered with your features to create a masterpiece of your face. The materials she'd placed upon you were thin and had sections of translucency. It exposed much of your skin to the cold air, bringing goosebumps to the surface, and seemed to leave the most important areas properly sealed, like a present to be unwrapped. You questioned again. Just what was a concubine? "What is Lord Geten expecting of me?" you ask, your nerves alight. For the first time that evening, surprise flashed over Akina's features, and she seemed almost pitying. "You will find out soon." Akina escorted you to his room, while you scoured the hallways fruitlessly for some clue of how to get out. The doors to his quarters materialized before you much too soon. Akina knocked, and Geten's voice carried through. "Enter!" Akina opened the door and allowed you to enter before shutting it firmly behind you, causing you to flinch. Your eyes traveled unwillingly to the person she had left you with. Geten lounged on the silken sheets of his sizable bed, his grin stretched wide like a devilish Cheshire. He rose from the bed, dressed in only a loosely tied blue robe, the neck of which dipped deep and exposed a lot more of his torso than you wanted to see. His eyes raked your form as he approached, and you shrunk in on yourself, feeling bare in the garments Akina had ordered you wear. He savored the walk to you, seeming gleeful at your skittish behavior. "That suits you more than the dirt-covered rags, don't you think, peasant?" He became uncomfortably close, and you couldn't help but back away until you were halted by the wall. His eyes sparkled with excitement, and he reached for your face. His knuckle trailed along your cheek, down to your chin, pushing your face up to meet his predatory stare. Why so nervous, like a baby deer that knows it's being hunted? There's no use being afraid, since you've already been caught. "Why?" you ask, your nerves bubbling over. "Why go through all this trouble and hurt my friends just to have me? You're wealthier than everyone in this town. You could have anyone willingly." "I could," Geten drawled. "But what fun is having things that are so easily attainable, when I could have a rare gem that no one else would ever be able to have, not even come close to? I'm not sure what it is, but you are different. I grew up around the finest items and know a true treasure when it appears before me." Geten's hands began to trail down your sides. "How could I allow something so precious to escape me?" His hand slipped to the back of your neck and tightened. "I could not." Geten surged forward, smashing his lips to yours. Driven by shock and fear, you react instinctively. You shove him away with the strength Katsuki trained into you, and your fist flies, clashing harshly with the bone of his jaw. Geten yelled out in outrage, and he stumbled back, holding his face. "How dare you!" You're shaking now, breathing heavily from panic, but find it difficult to move. Your legs tremble, but refuse to walk. "Don't come near me," you manage to force out, your voice sounding meek to your ears. Geten's eyes flashed with manic, his hand rising. "You do not give me orders. You do not refuse me. You are mine. I own you. Do you understand?" You ready yourself for the attack, Katsuki's drilling well established and flooding your limbs with the intent to counter Geten. But he stops. A switch had flipped and caused Geten's angry outburst to be washed away by an icy calm. He lowered his hands, regaining his composure, and yelled, "Guards!" The guards entered the room, instantly ensnaring you in their cold, metallic grip. "Take this peasant to the dungeons," he said simply. "Ensure they have the full experience of what happens to someone who defies me." You were dragged away, though you would have happily run from there. The further you became from that room, the more relieved you felt. You nearly sagged in the guard's grip. They led you out of the mansion and into the frosted air of the garden behind. It was the middle of the night, and you shivered from the chill, your revealing clothing shielding you as much as strips of paper would. They eventually got to a shed-like building that had 2 guards outside and torches adjacent to the door. The guards unlocked the door as you approached and shoved you forward through the darkness. One followed with a torch just in time for you to notice the steps. You swallowed. Were they taking you underground? They hashed you down the steps, and you nearly cried from joy once you reached the bottom. The single torchlight revealed Katsuki and Edro, leaping up fervently at the sight of you. "Traveler!" they shouted with reprieve. They must have been just as worried with the unknowns of what had happened to you as you were with them. The gate of a cell creaked open, and a guard shoved you forcefully into it, You catch yourself on your hands, but your knees jarred with the hard cement. The gate slammed shut with a resounding metal clang, and the guards departed, taking their light with them. Before you could properly view your friends' faces, you were plunged into darkness. Your sight was taken from you. All living beings were reduced to bodiless voices. "Traveler?" Edro called again, hesitant and nervous now. You tried to take comfort in knowing that they were not far, however much the dark unsettled you. "Are you guys okay?" You call back. "Are we okay? What the fuck were you thinking?" Katsuki shouted angrily, his voice bouncing off the walls. "You agreed to be his fucking concubine? Are you an idiot?" "Katsuki!" Edro chided, but you were much too exhausted and brimmed with the stress of what had occurred moments ago. You would not accept Katsuki's reprimand. "He had a spear to Edro's throat, Katsuki. What did you expect me to do?" You shout back furiously. "Anything else?" Katsuki yelled. "You should have done anything else. Do you even know what a concubine is?" The dungeon snatched your voice. In the endless black, you swore you felt phantom hands prodding along your sides. "Traveler?" Edro called, his voice heavy with worry and strain. "I think I got the idea," you say curtly, hoping the burn in your throat was not prominent. "Did he... Are you... I'm fine," you say sharply. "He... tried to... I punched him. That's how I got thrown in here." "Nicely done," Katsuki praised after a pause, but he sounded no less taut. The pride his words should carry froze in the dank dungeon. It had been cold outside, but in this prison, the Arctic was trapped with them. You sink onto the ground, curling your knees tightly to your chest, trying to maintain some warmth even as you shook. "Did you guys happen to figure out a way to escape?" "No," Katsuki admitted reluctantly. "Our magic is back, but these bars are made with dense magic-suppressant metals." Sparks crackled in the dark briefly, and you could see the silhouette of Katsuki holding onto the bar. "My magic is only good for a light show, and Edro can't even shift. He'd be crushed. Fire would just suffocate us." "But don't worry, Traveler," Edro said quickly, trying to sound confident. "We'll find a way out, okay?" The glacial air slithered over your skin, slipping through the layers, and began its assault on your bones. The dense shadows felt akin to a thick fleece suffocating you. As you trembled on the icy cement, exhausted and freezing in this impossible situation, you felt hopeless. But you could not crush Edro's will, not when he was trying to reassure you. "Yeah, we'll figure something out." The sight of you tortured Edro. He knew you could not see them, but he, with his draconic eyes, endured the sight of you. You had eventually passed out from exhaustion against the wall of your cell after what felt like hours being dragged on like a bag of sand. It pained him to watch your body as it shook with the effort to survive, while he was uselessly 2 carriage lengths away, pacing himself to madness and unable to rip his gaze from you. "Edro, give it a rest," Katsuki said softly. While he was thankful Edro had stopped fixating on the bars that enclosed them, this did not feel any better. Edro snapped to him. "Katsuki, they're freezing. They're not even wearing anything to help them stay warm. They're not like us. They could die down here." "I know that," Katsuki gritted back. He too could not pull his gaze from your shaking silhouette, for fear that you would stop shivering, and death would join their small party. He felt too helpless against the oppressive shadows, but could not let himself be overrun with worry when both Edro and you depended on him. Try to think of a way out of here. That's the only way we're going to help them. That bastard is not going to let them die here, not after all the trouble he went through to get them. They're fighting, so we'll fight to save them. Edro didn't calm at Katsuki's words, but he heeded them. Katsuki could not see as well as Edro, only the outlines, but heard him concede. He thumped to the ground beside Katsuki. In the quiet of the oblivion, they allowed their minds to travel through the dungeon and search for a way out. Stay awake, traveler, Katsuki growled anxiously. Come on, traveler, you haven't finished your story. What happens next? Please, Edro pleaded. You squeeze your eyes and force them open to barely slits. I don't remember. Then say something else, anything else. Just stay awake. Time had no meaning in the inky black, and in this moment, lacking your sight, freezing to death. You couldn't even be sure those voices were truly Edro or Katsuki's, forcing you to endure the suffering. Perhaps you'd been driven mad by the sensory deprivation, hypothermia, and hunger, and were imagining their brash tones. I want to sleep, you whined softly, into the black hole of your surroundings. Traveler, please, you can't. Come on, dumbass, stay the fuck awake. And you were trying to, but sleep enticed you, murmured sweet nothings promising escape from this torture. If not for Katsuki and Edro, you may have already succumbed. The guards opened the doors at the top of the stairs, the sound of heavy footfalls announcing their presence. It felt like a miracle at the time, but you would later realize that this is what they waited for. Geten had ordered them to wait until you reached the brink of death, and know that he was able to bring you there without lifting a single of his own fingers. The guards appeared with their torches, and you cringed away from the light. They entered the cell, yanking you onto your feet, but you could not stand. They pulled you, stumbling on numb limbs, out of the cage. No, wait, you say, tugging with no force against the guards. How could you leave Katsuki and Edro here? Edro shook his head frantically. We'll be okay. You can't stay here. Katsuki screamed as you were taken away. They better not fucking die. Do you hear me? If they die, we will burn this whole town to the ground. The last guard slapped his spear against the bars. Keep it down. Katsuki lashed out against the bars, snarling, and the guard jumped back with fright, nearly tripping over his own feet. He righted himself hastily, mumbling, "Barbarians," under his breath, and following after his colleagues. They were among the shadows once more, though the source of their worry was no longer in sight. Their chests tightened with uncertainty. Edro stared after you, his grip fastening on the bars as the seconds ticked by. Katsuki glanced over when he remained frozen too long. Edro? He said unsurely. Edro was quiet, and it was only when Katsuki squinted that he could see his labored breath. Katsuki instantly moved to his side. Hey, they're gonna be fine. Remember what I said. That bastard won't let them die. Edro's grip on the bars loosened, and he nodded, while taking a shaky breath to calm himself. I know, he choked. I'm just scared. Edro did not battle with just your absence, but his own confinement, a fear he possessed since he was captured. Now with the added fear of what you might be experiencing up there without him to protect you, was unbearable. Katsuki grasped onto Edro's wrist, and before he could second-guess his actions, he flung his arms around the dragon. Edro was stunned by Katsuki's hug. We're going to be fine. I got you out of a cage once, and I'll be damned if you stay in this one. We're gonna get out of this. We're gonna get out of here and get them, so stop panicking. Edro wasn't sure if it was Katsuki's reassurance that calmed his panic, or the shock of his comfort, but he found himself burying his face in Katsuki's shoulder, relishing in the touch. We're going to get them out.